all is not lost. The company has clearly indicated that from the Australian and South Australian government point of view, it could not have asked for anything more. All the regulatory approvals have been in place for over 12 months. This is purely a commercial decision by the BHP Billiton board. I also welcome the decision of BHP Billiton to continue to work with the South Australian and Australian governments to actually make this project a reality. It is challenged by the size of the project at the moment, its capital-intensive nature and the cost of capital. Copper prices are still attractive. Our responsibility with the South Australian government, and I might say BHP Billiton, is to continue to work in a constructive way with a view to reducing the cost of the capital related to the project, and in doing so make it a reality. I must say I personally am not surprised at the BHP decision, given the size of the project. Potentially the pit is as big as the South Australian CBD in terms of Adelaide, and I might say you're talking about removing overburden for a period of about 5 years, which means a huge capital outlay before you turn a quid. So I simply say there's disappointment both at Australian and South Australian government level, but as far as I'm concerned, the project is still there to be grabbed. Our responsibility is to work with BHP Billiton to actually get this project in place in the future.
Mr Ferguson, the opposition's already citing the carbon tax, the mining tax and the industrial relations regime.
Look, have a look at what BHP Billiton said. It's very clear, both publicly and privately in discussions with me, there's nothing more the South Australian and Australian governments could have done. This is a board decision, it is a commercial decision. It is not a regulatory decision. Everything BHP Billiton wanted was given to BHP Billiton by the two governments over 12 months ago.
Mr Ferguson, there is praise for the South Australian government in their statement, but there's no praise for the federal government. It's kind of glaringly not there.
Look, I think I spend a bit more time with BHP Billiton than you do. I know where their head's at. I've had discussions with the chair of BHP Billiton as late as last week. As someone who has to follow the market, and I might say where each of the projects are up to, this was not a committed capital investment. I always knew it was challenging. This is the second iteration, which has led to the BHP Billiton board saying no, not at this time. Look at the drop in commodity prices. Look at the earnings of BHP Billiton. You know, Olympic Dam was competing with all the other BHP Billiton projects around the world in terms of potential investment funding. March last year, BHP Billiton spent $12.5 billion in Australia in iron ore, thermal and coking coal. We did exceptionally well. This was always the project that was going to be hard to get because of the capital-intensive nature. The change in economic circumstances, given the cost of capital, and I might say the global environment, has led to the BHP Billiton board, appropriately probably, being very cautious in terms of their willingness to commit to a project such as this at this point in time.
With easing commodity prices, are we likely to see more projects now being delayed from other companies?
Look, we're pretty lucky. We've got an investment pipeline of about 270 billion. A huge amount of capital investment underway in Australia at the moment. I think quietly that investment pipeline is going to be put in place. The real issue is, given the global community at the moment, and the issue of commodity prices, look at thermal coal at the moment, about $80 a tonne, iron ore down to about 115, I think coking coal's at about 118. Our job is to actually deliver the existing investment. I think potential new investment is going to be challenging to a variety of boards for some time to come. But we've got 280 billion committed capital investment. Just go and have a look at a place like Barrow Island and the Gorgon project to see the huge benefit this is bringing to Australia in terms of jobs, both in construction and all the associated content opportunities from maritime services, aviation services, catering services, manufacturing services, etc. My real challenge at the moment is the Resources Minister with companies such as BHP Billiton is to try, as we are through enterprise migration agreements and all the associated training programs, to get the labour in place to build these projects. It is a huge challenge. We're the envy of the world in terms of what we've got underway in Australia at the moment.
So, Minister, are you completely ruling out that the mining tax and the carbon tax had any impact on this decision?
Well, firstly, the mining tax only applies to 3 commodities. In essence, the PRRT for petroleum, the MRRT for coal and iron ore. In terms of this project, always going to be the question of the huge capital intensive nature of it, the cost of capital. It is completely unrelated to the carbon tax, and BHP Billiton effectively says that in its media release, and I might say in discussions with me as late as today in terms of its decision on this project.
On the MRRT, BHP says it'll have sort of a credit of about $670 million against its mining tax liability. How does that
Look,
affect?
I am been through what else BHP Billiton may or may not have said today or in recent times. Those issues have been attended to by the Treasurer and Treasury. All the forward projections in terms of the budget estimates are of a Treasury nature, and I'll wait and see where we end up over the next 12 months.
You say all is not lost, so when can you see this project perhaps going ahead again? Is it years away?
Well, that's for the BHP board to decide. Look, this is a commercial decision, purely a commercial decision. It is in no way related to any regulatory process in Australia. They've indicated publicly that they want to revisit the project, and I say this is the 3rd time it's been revisited. The current proposal is far different in nature to the original proposal I was working on in about 2008. They're going to have a hard look at now at the capital intensive nature, how we get the cost of the project down, and so they should, because they've got to appropriately look after the needs of shareholders. And our job, both mine and Tom Koutsantanis, the South Australian ministers, to reaffirm we're committed to the project and continue to work in the very constructive way we have with BHP Billiton.
How much of a blow is this for the South Australian economy?
Look, it would have been lovely to get the project up. It would have been, you know, the icing on the cake for South Australia. But I give full credit to the South Australian government over a long period, especially starting with Mike Rann and Kevin Foley and now Jay Weatherall. It's a different economy to the nature of the economy when they were first elected. You know, 2007 when we got elected, you wouldn't have thought about Mitsubishi not being in operation today. They have managed that because the government actually set out to diversify the economy. They reinvented the mining industry in South Australia through an endeavour to encourage exploration and development. It's a very pro-mining state. Olympic Dam in its current form is a great project. We've got a whole diversification. They've chased the export industry in terms of education. They've got defence over there now in terms of manufacturing. I think South Australia is pretty well positioned. They'll get through this. It would have been wonderful to get it. It would have been basically a terrific opportunity for the next 10 to 20 years' time just in terms of building this project. It's not lost. We'll continue to work to get it. Of great benefit to South Australia and potentially to the whole of Australia.
But with BHP citing subdued commodity prices as a factor and the carbon tax pushing up the cost of production, how can you say the carbon tax isn't a factor?
If you actually go and have a hard look at where copper prices are at the moment, yes, uranium prices are down because of Fukushima. Copper prices, if we actually get the cost of this project down from a capital point of view, still mean the project is viable. Our job is to work with BHP to deliver the cost of delivering the project. Boards have to have a look at this. You know, they are competing at a board level for different divisions to actually get investment funds. Olympic Dam has to compete with iron ore, coal, petroleum, etc. And BHP's already in recent weeks had to front up to what was probably a wrong decision at the time, given what they paid for their tight gas opportunities in the United States. So they've had to manage that right down at the same time as work through this challenging project, given the cost of capital. So, you know, it's the board's responsibility. As I said, I've worked on this project both in opposition and in government. It would have been terrific to land it. But, you know, I'm not giving up, nor is the BHP Billiton board, and nor is the South Australian government. It is there, it will be grabbed at a point in the future.
How do you actually get the capital cost down? What would have to happen?
We'll have to rework the nature of the project. The size, you know, as I said, on current proposal is equivalent to a open pit about the size of the Adelaide CBD. You're reducing overburden for about 5 years. That is a huge outlay in terms of investment funds without a return on the investment. These issues are pretty challenging to boards given the global community at the moment. We are lucky as a country. $280 billion in committed capital investment. For BHP Billiton, given the state of the global community at the moment, not Australia, this would have been a huge risk to the board of BHP Billiton, and they are accountable to shareholders.